In this eighth season, there are two proposals that will be presented. Namely, the first proposal from Mr. Ho Jun Ang from University Brunei Darussalam, and the second proposal from Mr. Mulya Agung from Institut Teknologi Sains Bandung, Indonesia. I think they are already. Okay, thank you. So let's start the presentation. To Mr. Ho Jun Ang, please, it's time is yours. Thank you.
Right.
It's time for you is 15 minutes, and the timekeeper will remind you about the time left. Thank you very much. Please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jun Ang, and I'll be presenting about the real-time wave energy forecasting with physics-informed Kolmogorov-Arnold networks, or PCANs for short. Okay, so what is the motivation of this study is that marine forecasting is really important, especially in ASEAN, since we are basically covered with bodies of water. So we would like to sometimes know how the waves would behave in marines. And so far, the existing problems is that for numerical models like computed fluid dynamics, the computational speed is quite slow or is too expensive. And data-driven models, machine learning, like long short-term memory or LSTM, are too black-boxed, as in they are not really interpretable. And yeah, they're also kind of slow a bit as well. And then there's also, for my literature review, I don't really see a lot of forecasting in terms of forecasting flume beds in literature in ASEAN. And also the lack of physical consistent is mostly data-driven, essentially. So the goal is to develop a real-time, low-cost, physics-informed ICT system, which is easily deployable hardware, such as Raspberry Pi and all that, which will be explained later. And this would be aligned with the ASEAN Digital Economy Framework Agreement, or DFA, which is to contribute to the ASEAN's economy by 2030. So the target is to essentially build a smart IoT-enabled water tank for real-time monitoring. And it would also support the Wawasan Brunei 2035 and the UN SDGs 7 and 13, which will be discussed later as well. Yeah. So for the proposed method for the system architecture, first, there would be waves producing from a wave generator in the tank flume, and the wave heights and the period would be detected using ultrasonic sensors like cameras, ultrasonic sensors to detect the wave height, cameras, and pressure sensors as well. And data here would be sent to a ESP32, which uses the IoT aspect to send the data to an edge device, such as a Raspberry Pi. And it would process this data and apply machine learning algorithms, which will be stored in a cloud server, and such as ThinkSpeak and all that. And then it would be displayed in a dashboard so that it's easier to visualize. And for the data processing, the collected data would be collected and processed in the Raspberry Pi, where it will be cleaned, extracted, and it will go through many models, like LSTM, MLPs, physics-informed neural networks. But one particular algorithm that I want to try is the physics-informed Kolmogorov-Arnold network, where essentially it implements physics-informed neural networks, but it adds the activation function to be learnable parameters. And then the models would be benchmarked and would be compared. and they will be stored in a IoT dashboard in ThinkSpeak. And in terms of the tank, on how it would look like, is that the length of the tank would be 2 meters times 0.5 meters in width, with a 0.4 meters in height, and the working fluid would be around 0.26 meters max. And here there would be a wave generator where there would be a power supply connected to it with 2 steeper motor drivers pushing the actuator plates, which would be shown later. And there would also be a beach with a ratio of 1:8, so that it absorbs the wave, or absorbs as much as possible, so that none of it would reflect to the wave generator. And I've used steel to support this structure, and I've also used acrylic for better visualization purposes. And after simulating it, the deflection rate is very small, and so far there's not been any problems when I apply the finite element analysis method here to simulate the water waves. And moving on. So the wave generator, as mentioned before, would be around here, where it would push the actuator plate back and forth motion, generating the waves here. And to detect the height and the period, it would use ultrasonic sensors, depth cameras, and pressure sensors. And it would be sent to the ESP32. It will be sent into the ESP32, where it would be sent into the Raspberry Pi for processing purposes. For scientific impact, it would demonstrate that the AI, IoT, and physics-based computing would be integrated. And it would also give a more robust forecasting for fluid systems. Yeah. And in terms of technological impact, it will be scalable for wave forecasting and port safety. So if we know, like, if we implement this in a coastal region, for example, after training the model, we may be able to know if a high tide or low tide is coming in a shore, for example. And this would also align with the ASEAN Renewable Energy Roadmap of managing high shares of renewable energy by 2045. So, yeah. And in terms of societal and collaboration, it would also, again, support the OAS on 2035, the SDGs, the regional values of ASEAN Platform for Data-Driven Marine, and the other collaboration, which is under DFA. And yeah, so in terms of outcomes, I've trained some of the models here. So there is, these are some of the models, and I've used the open source data set in my literature review. And I've found out that in terms of pecan over here, the loss is quite less compared to the other models. And although the loss is slightly greater than other state-of-the-art models like LLTM and all that, in terms of physical, it has an advantage, which is having a higher physical interpretability. So, yeah. And yeah. And in terms of the timeline, until now, I have designed the tank, and I've simulated the models as well, and I've done the literature review. And for phase 2, 1.5 years from now, I'll be actually, yeah, almost 2 years from now, I'll be fabricating the tank and the sensors and integrating them. And for phase 3, which is a year, I would train the model and try to evaluate, which basically just train the model for forecasting, essentially. Yeah, so to summarize, The target is to develop low-cost, real-time ICT systems for wave forecasting by implementing an IoT data pipeline and physics-informed AI. And the impact would be integrating this under the ICT for advanced technologies and applications. And this would be aligning with the ASEAN goals like DFA, renewable energy systems, and other climate resilience projects. So in the future work, I'll extend the model for actual buoys for long-term forecasting and for dynamic marine conditions as well. And maybe I'll also scale up the digital energy platform that plugs into the DFFA and ACC SAP initiatives. And yeah. So thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Are you very efficient in using the time? Still 10 or 9 minutes to go now. Maybe many questions already in audience head now. So you know that this is this very good and very robust technology, especially also it is also in line with the purpose of the ASEAN NICT IVO.
Yeah.
So hopefully, I hope there's many questions from the audience here. So the time I invite audience to give some question, especially the steering committee maybe.
Okay, thank you. My question is that when you say you will scale up the method, for example, you have larger scale of the sensors and I don't know, is that big data? Do you still use Raspberry to run the machine learning, or you will use cloud or something?
For that one, it depends actually. If we want to add a buoy, for example, like a buoy system, something like this. Yeah. So if we add like if you want to use a buoy system, then maybe we can add a Raspberry Pi, or we can just build an internal computer inside here so that it can process the data remotely. Yeah, so yeah, something like that. We just build if it's this size, then we can build an internal computer inside. But if it's something smaller, then yeah, we would most likely have to add a Raspberry Pi. Yeah.
Okay, how about if it needs more resources?
More resources.
I mean, computation resources.
More computational resources is, then most likely we'll train this data because there are some trade-offs for if you want it to be more accurate, but if you want to make the shape of the buoy to be smaller, but then we have to sacrifice some accuracy by maybe dividing the time intervals to collect the data, extending it. So example, rather than gathering the data for every 10 minutes, maybe instead it has to gather data for every 30 minutes, for example.
Okay, yeah. So you control the granularity of the data.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any, please?
Sorry, the plan is to develop a prototype, right? Not the actual deployment.
Yeah, prototype for now.
For now.
Yeah.
So I noticed that your pressure. I mean, the question here is, what type of wave generator are you planning to develop?
For the wave generators, in terms of this system, or what kind of waves are we simulating?
Yes.
Yeah. We can just simulate any wave. We can simulate any wave conditions we want by using this system essentially. So we're basically just controlling the front and back trough of the waves. So we can simulate some of the waves that we want. So that we can train a model for deployment if we add a buoy here, for example. where you can train the data, something like that.
Uh, the challenge here is that the pressure transducer should not be part of your buoy because otherwise it will be carried. I mean the fixture. Anyway, another question is on your P6, your PCAN, Kolmogorov network. So you're just basically using the PCAN and not on the your structure. Yeah.
Yeah. But before deployment, I'll also try to use other models like LSTMs, MLPs, rainforests. But I just find that using PCANs is more interesting. I just want to explore more on it.
Yes. So the primary goal is to develop a model that would forecast energy, wave energy, right?
Yeah.
So, but in harnessing wave energy, there are different technologies. Can be vertical or it can be horizontal or whatever designs, Kaplan or whatever. Using different turbine or whatever. So, I'm not sure if that is part of your consideration.
One of my considerations is maybe this can be implemented in a wave energy converter, because maybe in future wave energy converters, maybe there's like, we can add some small computer in it and it will be trained from this model perhaps. So something like that. It's like it has a mini computer built in so that it can forecast like which waves to, because in most wave energy converters, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it has to be set up for high tides and low tides to make it more efficient. So if it knows that a high tide is coming, then the wave energy converter can be optimized to set it into, to make it ready to capture high waves, for example, and vice versa.
High tide and low tide, you can just get the library.
Yeah.
It's already available. So highly forecasted.
Yeah.
So, and also the different water level, different pressure.
Yeah.
So that's also part of it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any question? Okay, waiting for the next question. I just want to ask a simple question. It is about the ASEAN collaboration mechanism. To achieve the regional collaboration in data sharing, are there plans to develop an open source protocol or standard API to integrate wave sensor data from a different coastal testbed across ASEAN? If there are, do you have which institution or country are the initial partner targeting for regional testbed validation? This is a test of the readiness of the collaboration execution. I think it's very important for the country like Indonesia, which is surrounding by we have many coastal. So we have to be ready if you want to ask us to be collaboration, something like that. What can you answer that?
Can you rephrase the question again? I'm sorry.
It's about the develop an open source protocol or standard API to integrate the wave sensor data from different coastal testbed. Do you have a plan to do that?
Yeah. So after developing the system and the framework, I might just publish it and share it with the ASEAN community on how to implement it. Yeah. So in terms of,
you can mention this one.
Yeah.
And the second one about the contribution of the disaster preparedness in the context of early warning of storm surge. The advantage of the model lies in the speed, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what is PINCAN unique contribution to disaster forecasting compared to existing operational model such as SWAN that can run on high performance?
Like SWAN and SWASH, right?
Yeah,
the computation model. They can
performance class.
Yeah. Because they can be used. It's just that they just require higher computational costs. So compared to the model that I'm making, essentially. So it depends on the system. Like, does the user want to invest in SWAN or CFDs to predict the forecasting, but with a trade-off of higher computations, like higher GPUs, more expensive CPUs, and etc. Or do they want a more data-driven approach, like pecans, for example, or LSTM? So yeah, it depends on the user, essentially.
Okay, still more minute to have any question? It's okay. So I think thank you very much for your presentation. Hopefully you can continue to the call for proposal.
Yeah.
We're waiting there.
Okay. All right,
Thank
okay.
you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay. The second speaker will be Pak. Whichever is. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, this one. Yeah. Will be Pak Mulya Agung from Institut Teknologi Sains Bandung, Indonesia. Time is yours, Pak.
Thank you, Bu. Good afternoon, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to present one of my work. I hope you still have spirit in these sleepy hours. So today I will be presenting resource-efficient approach for large-scale genome-wide association studies. My name is Mulya, and I'm from Institut Teknologi Sains Bandung, Indonesia. But this is actually one part of program across the collaboration across the globe from University of Edinburgh and Korean Institute of Science and Technology. So first I want to talk about the background of this research. So what is genome-wide association studies, usually called GWAS, is actually the discovery of associations between genetic variations and traits. And so far, more than 90,000 GWAS have been performed as of 2024, and it's not slowing down. And for you that's not familiar with the GWAS, suppose we have genotype. It's information of variation in the genome between individuals. So we like to know the association between the genes variations and the phenotypes or traits of our interest. This can be many things. This can be measurable traits like height or weight, or diseases like diabetes, cancer. Also, the previous presentation is Alzheimer or dementia. And also, if we talk about animals and plants, it's about yield production, disease resistance, and so on. So basically, there are two computational problems of GWAS currently. The first is computationally expensive, and the second is really prone to false positive due to the multiple testing. So the first is computationally expensive because currently we can have millions to billions of genetic variation to be tested. And we really need a lot of computational resource to do that. And then related to false positive, usually typical GWAS perform some statistical correction to maintain false positive. Like maybe you already know the simple one is Bonferroni corrections. But the simplest approach usually sacrifice the power. The statistical power or false negative. It means that you end up with not insufficient discoveries. So we need sophisticated statistical correction, but it's again is computationally expensive. So related to the ASEAN IVO program, so one of our current targets are GWAS on bananas, specifically wild bananas or Musa acuminata species. It's essential fruits around the world, but Southeast Asia and also ASEAN is a major part of them. And while some studies have been done to do GWAS on cultivated bananas, but there's still very, very limited studies on the wild bananas, although it's very important for conservation and breeding. For instance, the banana producer usually look for gene variation that associated with specific morphology like fruit quality, yield, and agronomic features. And regarding the computational cost, so the wild bananas is very different than cultivated bananas because they have high genetic diversity across the wild varieties, for example, on morphological traits. So this figure shows PCA analysis result from studied by one of our collaborators in Berlin. So they did genetic analysis across bananas in Sumatra. So we can find that there are actually many morphological traits. So each point is a morphological trait. It means that's small difference in the bananas. But we can see that even we can cluster them, there are still related morphological traits and also unrelated morphological traits. So this gives motivation. If we can understand the the gene variation to the related, unrelated morphological traits, we can we can develop varieties of bananas that have desirable traits like high production or high fruit quality. And the second cause of problem is the decrease in sequencing costs. For example, next generation sequencing is going cheaper, and we can end up with whole genome sequencing. In bananas, it has been reported tens of millions of variations so far, and despite this large number, open possibilities for discovery, it still introduce the GWAS challenge that I mentioned before. So next, I will introduce the proposed method. The first method, called CMA, or corrected meta-analysis approach, is basically defined on cohere approach of GWAS. So in traditional GWAS, we usually use whole samples and variants to do GWAS, which can be very demanding in terms of memory space and also longer analysis time. So CMA, different than the traditional, it split the whole cohort, the largest cohort, into smaller subsets, and then it can compute the smaller subsets independently, and then it combines all the results from the subsets to get the final result of GWAS. So in the end, the input is the same, but the output, and the output is also the same, just the process is different. So there are two benefits of the method. The first is by splitting the cohorts, we can use a smaller and cheaper computer to run smaller workloads. And then we can also improve the efficiency by running them in parallel to use a large number of cores. If we have that, if we don't have that, we can have smaller memories. And then this figure shows that the current evaluation on the human datasets, we can say that CMA has a comparable statistical performance, but in terms of the resource efficiency, it's much faster compared with the existing state of the art. It's almost 10 times in the same machines, and also with less memory usage, which linearly decrease with the number of splits that we have. So this method has been published on genetics, so you can read the further method, and also it's open source. You can obtain it in the repository. The second method is called GWAS. It's focused on GWAS permutation on GPUs. As I mentioned before in the first hand, one problem of the GWAS is false positive. So the gold standard for maintaining false positive is permutation testing. Maybe all of you already familiar with permutation testing. It's very accurate, but it's often impractical because it needs large computational resources, especially if you have a lot of genetic data. For example, in this figure, you can show that in the normal, compared with the normal GWAS, the number of the permutation will increase the number of regression linearly with the number of permutation, and also consequently with the complexity of matrix multiplications and inverse. But meanwhile, we have a little hope that for 50 years of microprocessor trend architecture development, currently we have many hardwares that have a large number of cores. Because we cannot improve significantly anymore the single thread performance due to the power constraints. So like GPU, we can have thousands or 10,000 cores in one GPU card. So by this trend, the GWAX want to exploit the current development, the architecture development to make the permutation more tractable or more practical. So compared with the previous method or existing method on CPU, we basically will offload the phenotype and trait into the GPU, and then we run them inside the GPU, including the permutations, and then we get the result transferred to the CPU. So GWAX is also open source. You can obtain it from the repository, and the publication currently is still bioRxiv. You can also get evaluation and the detail of the method in the paper. So in terms of the GPU optimization or performance, it performs 3 basic steps. The first is, genotype or genetic data can be very large, and we also know the one problem of GPU, the memory is very limited and it's small. So how basically we want to load all the genotype on the large genotype is impossible. So GWAX addressed that problem by partitioning the genotype into smaller markers. So it doesn't matter you have how large genotype, you can make it smaller and sequentially process that on this GPU. And the second is, like I mentioned before, GPU have 1,000 to perhaps 10,000 cores, but currently there is no GWAS method or permutation. We can utilize all of them. Even we can run some methods on GPU, but it's not efficient. So it performs batch regression by markers to maximize the GPU utilization. And the last one, because GPU usually is accelerator and is installed on CPU, so we basically need to offload the data. We need to transfer the data before we can run the computation on GPU, and it can introduce the inefficiency or computer delay. So GWAX overlapping data transfer with kernel computation to hide the latency or delays caused by the data transfer. As a result, this is some result. It can be 100 times faster than the current state of the art on a supercomputer with 88% less energy usage. And compared with the same existing, the recent method on GPU is also 100 times faster. So it means that if we use GWAX, we can replace 100 machine or server just using a single GPU card. So next, I will present the impacts of these methods. First is, since 2008, genomics data is outpacing Moore's law by a factor of 4. What does it mean? It means that even we have a really large genomic data, we cannot do anything on it because it's almost impossible with the current methods and current systems to do analysis on this genomic data set. But meanwhile, we have a computer architecture shift using accelerator like GPU, like quantum computing, or perhaps FPGA and so on. So basically this accelerator is based on the idea that you have a large number of cores, but the problem is how to utilize the number of cores. So this approach, we hope that will support this kind of problem, and the growth of genomic data size scale, which requires resource efficient method, is addressed by this method. We also expect that the further development of software in genomic research and also in GWAS will be based on our approach to mitigate the challenge associated with large data size. So the second impact is more related to ICT. So since 2010, cloud computing has already been used in biology and also genomic research to utilize data-intensive computing, also to support large data sets. And also it's becoming more common because cloud computing, in cloud, you can, it can facilitate data sharing and then data governance and data harmonization, and also including the reproducibility in research, which is quite important in biology or in genomic research to be reproducible. So this approach will promote the sustainability goals in ICT because it benefits the research community, especially researchers with limited resources, because it's becoming common and scarce budget and funding. And the last impact, but are not least, as I mentioned before, GWAS is not human-only problem, but also you can use it for animals and plants. There are a lot of studies that you can do, and we hope that this resource will foster the collaboration, like the example that on bananas that we are doing. So in the research output, we generally want to create GWAS pipeline for bananas, and we hope it can be used for Southeast Asia because it's a major part of bananas. So it includes the public data set that you can use. Our current trait focus is fusarium resistance and morphology traits and yield. And so we want to provide linkage and kinship reference across varieties that will be useful for producer or for people that doing the breeding of bananas. And also GWAS summary statistic in public database. And in the end, we want to we provide a genetic basis of Musa acuminata that help us to understand the genetic heritability of across the traits. Okay, sorry for the late. So the conclusion is GWAS is powerful, and there is a current big data problem of the genomic research. We present resource efficient approach. One ongoing project is to use it for wild bananas on Southeast Asia, and we expect further development will be based on our approach. And this is the approach. The methods are open source. You can access it. And this is the collaboration, including the collaboration from national agency in Indonesia. And thank you for attention. I will be happy to get any question.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any, I think in my opinion, this proposal is very good and technology challenge in the futures, but maybe in audience many question in Ismat, please, I invite you to give the question. If not yet there, I have some question.
Okay.
It's about the regional implementation. It's about the genomic resources of wild banana.
Yes, exactly.
Just I don't, compared to my country, this is the first time I know this one. The proposals state that this framework will apply to wild banana in Indonesia. I think, yeah.
Yeah,
The genomic data, genotype and early phenotype for wild banana available at the sufficient scale to test the big data efficiency claims?
Yes.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay. If, are you okay? So, further question I didn't ask again. Because if I want to ask this, if not, how will this data acquisition plan be synchronized with the development of the tool about the efficiency metric in ASEAN? That is what I called it.
Okay, it's a very good question and challenging question. So currently we are collaborating with national agency, and we are still exploring collaboration opportunity across ASEAN, not only Indonesia. For example, in the previous study of, I think it's also published in recent publication that some morphological data of wild bananas are sharing also in Malaysia. Very large number of morphological traits are sharing. So in the end, we want to find, so before, for example, 10 years ago, we cannot do whole genome sequencing, especially in bananas, because it's very expensive. But now it's going to be cheaper. And we like to have whole genome sequencing in wild bananas across the varieties, for example. So we get one sample of its varieties, and we sequence it somehow. So that's why we are also exploring funding for that. And then the most expensive one is actually the phenotyping, because we need to actually get data from the fields, for example, fruit quality, and then the shape of the banana, and then the resistance to the virus Fusarium. So if we get that phenotype and the scale of genome sequencing data, we need a computational method to make sure that we can utilize the data and get discoveries without false positive. That's, I think, the relationship.
Okay. Is there? Okay, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Mulia, for your wonderful presentation.
You're
So I would like to ask about what type of database that suitable for this representation, because the data is big, and you mentioned that you have online cloud, but in the cloud, what are the format or the type of database management system that you use? Is it vector database or graph database or what?
Okay, good question. So it's again, over the past 2 decades, it's actually text database, but because it's not possible anymore, because the genomic data scale, we use binary data. So the reason of using binary data, we have a genomic-based compression. So we compress the data as much as we can, so we can have a smaller size that we can get for the genomic data. So it's actually basically a binary file. We can put it on database because it's useless, because it's heavily compressed on the binary data. That's why actually in this method, we also perform some data compression to make it even smaller to get into the GPU.
Okay, if we compress the data, how you make sure that the semantic is not gone?
Yeah, that's the compression format that we are also working on it. But the current format, the current standard, current state of the art is Pling, and it's now there is a version Pling 2. That's currently the genomic research community use so far.
Okay,
Thank
I think time is finished. So thank you very much for Pak Mulia Agung, and hopefully we see you on the next call proposal, Pak.
Thank you. Thank
So,
you, Gul. Thank you. Thank you so
thank
much.
you very much for this session 8, and for both speakers, thank you very much for your collaboration. Thank you very much.